Welcome, everyone, to episode number 7 of Mazda Motorsports Moments. I'm your host, Tony Laporta. Today, we look at the grassroots side of Mazda Motorsports. More Mazdas are road raced any given weekend than any other brand of car out there today. So we're going to talk to a few of our racers, talk to a few of our executives, and learn more about Mazda on the grassroots side. Three-time national champion at the grassroots level behind the wheel of a Mazda, Stane joins us once again here on Mazda Motorsports Moments. Danny, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us, and thanks for always representing Mazda as a brand on the racetrack and off of it so strongly. Grassroots racing is a big part of your life. I know we talked about it a little bit on the photography episode, but just refresh us. Where did your love and your passion for racing come from?
I think the need for speed is something that's in your genes. There's a picture of me sitting on a bicycle when I'm 2 years old. My elbows are out in a motocross style. And apparently I didn't say to my dad, look how fast I am. It was, Dad, look how dangerous I am. So that was at the age of 2. So it's definitely not, it's not environment. It's got to be something genetics. So yeah, I've always been attracted by the need for speed, but my parents themselves were dead set against anything like this. They weren't interested in racing and certainly did not like motorbikes or anything. So I was told that if I didn't go racing or didn't get on a motorbike, they'd help me buy my first car at the age of 18, which they did. And then in 1993, I immigrated to the United States. I lived in a van for a year and a half, trying to figure out what I was going to do. Slowly started a few companies, some that succeeded, some didn't. And eventually I bought a car. And one of the beauties of this car was they allowed me to attend a sort of driving event. And at that driving event, it was the first time I'd ever, and this was at the age of 50, I'd gone in a car at speed on a track. And there were two coaches there, and both of them said, hey, you might have something. Why don't you give this a try? And as we know in this game, I think coaches are always hoping they're going to find a whale that takes them along. And I certainly fell for that, and ended up going to a racing school. And they told me, if you want to go fast, you better learn to go in a Miata. And they advised me of racing in a Miata. And I had no interest. I wanted a V8. To me, I needed power. I'd worked my whole life to make this up, and now I was going to go and have some fun. And the first weekend I got into Miata, I was there with my wife, and I got in this tiny little car, and I was miserable, and I banged my head, and my steering wheel was up here, and nothing about it was fun until I went through the first turn, and we were 4 or 5 wide, and the hook was in. And 11 years later, I have not had a bad moment behind the wheel of a Miata. You know, the wonderful thing about spec Miata, sometimes we're 60 or 70 people in very similar cars on the track. And I don't mind if you're in the first place or in 20th or 40th place, there are going to be a bunch of guys trying to get that position away from you. And so you're always racing wheel to wheel, door to door. And I just absolutely love racing Miatas.
You know, you obviously do a good job of explaining racing, and the thrill of speed has been a part of your life really the entire time you've been here. But then you get into Miatas. You find out the thrill of racing and the wheel-to-wheel competition that Mazda and Grassroots Motorsports offers. So now, however many years ago that was that you went through that first corner 4 or 5 wide, you're still racing. The hook is set, as you said. What keeps you coming back to the track every single weekend?
Well, I hate to say it, I'm now 62 years old. And when you get to my age, there's a certain concern that you might no longer be relevant in society, that your place is, people are looking to cast you aside. There's a younger crowd moving up. But the wonderful thing about motor racing is that a person like myself who works hard at it, whether it's fitness, health, data study, video study, and all of these things, and a certain modicum of skill, I think, is required. But if you put all of those together, at the age of 62, I can still race relatively well amongst teenagers. And here I am. Last year was my most successful year of racing ever. At the age of 61, won my 3rd national title. And in Spec Miata very last weekend was the first race back this year during COVID, was at the June Sprints, and we had 70 Spec Miatas, almost identical cars. And I wouldn't say I was contending for the win, but I was hanging on for the win. I finished fifth, and the top five were within 0.7 of a second after 40 minutes of racing. And this is incredibly satisfying. It might mean nothing to anybody else, but for me, it says, keep on working, stay young, stay healthy, watch what you eat, sleep early, exercise, put in the time, because if you do this, there really, it doesn't seem to be a reason that I can't continue this. And so in the back of my mind, the driver is, how long can I continue to be at the front of this class and be a contender? Or at least in my mind, I think I'm a contender.
You know, I never really understood the term poster child until we began interviewing Danny Stane here on Mazda Motorsports Moments. Danny, you literally should have a Mazda emblem, I feel like, admonished somewhere on your body. You do a great job selling the brand. Now, I think a fifth place finish at the June sprints, especially at a track like Road America, is absolutely something that plenty of people take notice of and care about, regardless of if you're 16 or 62. That's a phenomenal result, a great run at a very challenging racetrack. So we want to congratulate you on that. But now I want to talk about what Mazda does as far as, you know, the tangibles, the assistance, the contingencies that they give to their drivers. Again, whether you're 16 or you're 62 in Spec Miata, at these national events, at the grassroots level, Mazda goes out of their way to do a lot for drivers across the spectrum, but it means a little bit something different when you're not trying to make a career in motorsports, but instead are just cultivating a sense of community by racing Mazdas.
Look, absolutely. I think the sense of community is the defining part of the joy that we get. There really is, if you think about it, whether we win or we come 10th or 20th is not really the important thing. Is what you're always looking for is the respect of your peers. And what Mazda has done is this community that they have organized around the brand by making racing accessible and affordable and so well supported, it brings in a very special type of person who really appreciates not only the brand, but it appreciates the guy that's in the brand next to them. So there's an automatic respect that you get by racing a Spec Miata. And to me, that's valuable. I know that when I went into STL, you know, I was a newcomer, and yes, I was racing a Mazda there, but it wasn't the immediate respect that you get when you race a Spec Miata. This platform that they have, the support that they offer, the ease with which you can wheel this car near its limits, and then also the look, racing, no matter how you look at it, is still expensive, but it's a very inexpensive way to go racing. And even when you get it wrong and you put it into a wall at 100 miles an hour, the costs of getting that car back on the road are way less than it would be just about in any other brand out there. So trust me, even though it's not critical from a financial perspective, when I do get my Mazda Rewards money for a contingency thing, you know, it's one of those, and I go, oh man, I'm still relevant. I'm still relevant. So, yeah, it might not mean anything to anybody else, but to the individual, when he gets his check or his reward, or even just an accolade or even a mention, you know, whether you're running SCCA or NAS or any of these grassroots organizations, just a mention on social media, just a mention in the magazine, in whatever it might be. Those things are valuable. And I know that people go to the magazine every month and they page through it quickly to see if they might have got a mention. And we forget how important ego is in this as well. And we all do want our ego stroked. And we all look for this praise or relevance in different ways. And motor racing has been very valuable for me, just to keep excited about what am I going to do in my weekends.
And then, Danny, kind of the last thing I really want to hit on, and you began to touch on it a little bit there, and then you spoke more specifically to the actual benefits that Mazda gives its drivers, which in fairness is what I asked you about. But, you know, the community, you're a guy that in your last answer, you know, you just talked about whether you win or you finish 10th, you finish 20th, it doesn't matter. It's more, it sounds like to you, about going to the racetrack and enjoying that time, competing off the track, preparing your car, spending time with competitors, your family, your friends. The community that you enjoy in grassroots racing supported by Mazda, I would venture to say, is unlike anything else in yours or most other competitors' lives.
motor racing attracts a vast swath of the community. We have people from blue collar all the way to high-end lobbyists flying in on their private jets, people that could literally go and get a Ferrari or some other high-end brand. They could choose to race that, but they choose to race this Mazda. There is something really special about people that have the ability to go and do something way more expensively, but choose to race a Mazda because the platform is so good and the racing is so close. And so what that does for people is it makes us appreciate the effort, the skills, and also the room that we leave for others. There are times when I would have loved to have run somebody off a track because, you know, I felt he didn't give me enough room. But we're only as good as the people that we race against. And it's really easy for people to overdrive. It's really easy for people to be vindictive. But this class does not bring that out of us. What I'm always so impressed with is how much room and respect we all give each other in the hope that we will receive something similar from other drivers in the future. It doesn't always go that way. We all make mistakes. We all do stuff that we regret. But I think if you scratch every single Spec Miata driver, there's not one of us that wants to win by pushing somebody off the track or doing something that's not right. We want to be raced hard. We'll all go out of our way to help somebody get back onto the track again so that they are relevant and that they can compete heads up. And my best races, I'll be straight up, were never races that I won. My best races were always races where I left nothing on the table, and at the end of the day, I finished 5th or 10th, but there was nothing that I left. You know, that was the best I had, and those were the satisfying races. The races where I won driving away weren't very satisfying. It's the ability to fight wheel to wheel, door handle to door handle with your colleague. Those are the things. Those are the sensations and the emotions that we truly cherish.
Well, Danny, I got to say, especially considering on the last episode we had you on, when we spoke about the photo of you at the 2018 NASA event at Circuit of the Americas, you know, an event that you actually won, you know, you spoke to us back then about how that result came out of the top 2 guys being DQ'd in the tech shed. And you didn't even want to win that race and that championship that way. And you are a true representative of Mazda Motorsports, Mazda Grassroots Racing, and everything that Mazda as a brand wants to encapsulate, whether on the track or on the road. And personally, from everybody at Mazda, Danny, I have to say thank you for being such a strong advocate of the brand. And congratulations on just what's been a very impressive, yet late blooming, still equally fun career. We really appreciate you being on the show, and we cannot wait to see which trophies you add to your collection here coming soon. From Glendora, California, she is at the beginning of her career and is starting it off in the grassroots level. And of course, behind the wheel of a Mazda, Hannah Grisham joins us now on the show. Hannah, thanks so much for calling in. We appreciate the time. As I've kind of been going along the lines with all of our guests, what got you started in racing? Where did you find your passion for driving?
Well, so for me, it kind of came from my dad. My dad actually raced motorcycles all his life. He's actually won the Baja 1000, which is really cool. So my mom and sister had shown horses since they were young. And for me, that just wasn't my thing at all. I was more of a high energy child, and it was just too slow, not my thing. So my dad decided to get me into go-karts. He thought motorcycles are way too dangerous. So he found racing in go-karts and got me started in that.
And at only 20 years old, you know, it definitely is fair to say you're starting off, you're behind the wheels of race cars now, you're competing in big events. As a Teen Miata Challenge driver, you get to go and be a part of some really big races at some really cool properties. And you've already collected a few big wins yourself early on in your career.
Yeah, Mazda offers some amazing things, especially with the Teen Mazda Challenge. Like this year, for example, in August, we have a big race at Sonoma, which is for all the teams. So we were supposed to have kind of a shootout type thing at the national race this year, but since of COVID-19, that all got canceled. So they decided to take the shootout to Sonoma, and it's pretty much a race for $20,000, which goes to the Spec MX-5 series. So yeah, I've been lucky that the last 5 years I've gotten to go all over the country, even Dakota in 2018, which was awesome. I've seen a lot of cool tracks, met a lot of really awesome people. So that's really exciting. It's a great program.
So you talk about the events and the series that Mazda puts on, and you as a driver get to go compete in. Once you are at those events, and if you do well, there's contingency, there's prizes, there's awards that Mazda gives to their drivers. They're tangible things. They are ways to advance your career in racing. It's got to be good knowing that you have an OEM supporting you when you do well as far as achieving your goals.
Yeah, Mazda is unlike any car brand when it comes to grassroots racing. They offer so many amazing programs, not even just for the teens, but so many programs that really help people in this industry because racing is very expensive and not everyone has all the money to just go and buy a ride. So that's to me what's so awesome about Mazda is like for the teens, they have the ladder program. So pretty much every year, if you're a teen and you win your region's points, you go ahead and get a spot for the Mazda Road to 24. So that's a really cool thing they do, and the ladder just keeps going up and up and up continuously. Also, like in 2018 at Coda, they offered a really big. Them and Toyo offered a really big prize fund for the winner. So there's lots of really great things and contingencies that they offer for all the drivers.
And it sounds like when you're not doing the teen Miata stuff, you also had a chance, I understand, to get behind the wheel of some of the vintage Mazdas recently.
Yeah, I did. So another cool thing is that everyone in Mazda, there's so many people that you can just call, they're a phone call away and they'll help you. And it's really everyone. It's not like you have to track a person down. Even some of like the past winners who are like professional racing now, you can call them, get a hold of them. It's a really great community of people and it's so accessible. But so in my region, there's someone named Robert Davis who works for Mazda, and I have become really close with him the last couple of years. And they were out at Cal Speed running all the vintage Mazda cars. So he asked me if I wanted to run the GTO car, and that was a really, really cool experience. It was a really cool event. So yeah.
And then Danny Stane is another, Miata racer such as yourself, and he talks a lot about that feeling of getting behind a race car, getting behind the wheel of a race car. And, it may not be the biggest, the most powerful, the scariest thing, but when you go through a corner 4 or 5 wide in a Mazda Miata, it really is something unlike anything else out there.
Yeah, the Mazdas have such big fields of cars. We get 30, 40, even bigger. At the Nationals in 2018, I think we had like almost 70 or 80 cars. It gets crazy. And there's pictures from the Nationals of like, I think like 5 or 6 cars wide going into the first turn at Coda. So it's unbelievable racing for what it is. And, Miatas aren't the fastest cars, but we corner the turns like as fast as pretty much most things out there. So even though down the straightaway it's not the fastest, those cars still corner amazing. It teaches you so many great skills that you can really carry into any type of racing.
And then Hannah, I understand, I think we were talking about it before we began, that you're involved in some programs off of the track to help with your racing.
Yeah, so I work with City of Hope, which is a cancer treatment and research center here in my backyard in Duarte. And I've worked with them for a couple years now, and we've put on some events at the tracks where we've kind of had a bunch of information about what they do and tried to get people to donate money. We had some really exciting plans for this year, but it kind of didn't happen because of everything. But it's a really great program, and I specifically work with the more of the pediatric side because that's just my thing. But yeah, it's a really great program. I also do some stuff with a high school program called Athena Racing, which is pretty much for girls who are looking for careers in STEM, and they do this through racing.
Well, Hannah, it sounds exactly like, again, what Danny Stane has mentioned. Mazda and the grassroots racing field really attracts a different kind of competitor, someone that loves racing, someone that loves driving, but is also a really quality and stand-up individual. And I know that everyone at Mazda is proud of and grateful for you and your support whether it's on the track or off of it, and how you represent the brand. So we really appreciate you being on Mazda Motorsports Moments today, and hope you have a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you. You as well.
Competing on the racetrack during the weekends, and then selling in the showroom Monday through Friday. I guess that's old win on Sunday, sell on Monday ideology for our next guest, Taz Harvey. Taz, thanks very much for joining us. You are a racer with Mazda on the grassroots level, and you also own and operate several dealerships in the Northern California area. First off, tell me about your driving experience, your racing. How do you get into competing behind the wheel?
Well, we come from a motorcycle family at first, and my father and my grandma and grandpa owned motorcycle dealerships. And so that was my first racing experience, was racing motorcycles, and kind of culminated in 1990. I rode my last 6 days in Sweden, but I rode for Kawasaki in West Germany, back when it was West Germany. And I got a gold medal on a KX80, which was a long week, but 6 days race there, and then did 6 days again in Sweden. And after that, I kind of figured out I'd had, plenty of motorcycle experience, and felt it's time to transition to cars. So I went to World Challenge back then. It was SCCA World Challenge. Wonderful series. Had a lot of fun. Competed as a privateer with my father. Ken was working on the cars and building them, and I was destroying them. And, we had some good success there. Got really close to winning a championship a couple times. One time lost by 2 points in 96 or 97. And I just had a lot of fun. So, growing as an individual, we got married, had some kids, decided not to race. And then, it's like anything else, just pulled me back in. And next thing you know, I'm doing the 25 hours of Thunder Hill. Really, really enjoyed that with Mazda. Ran it a few times as the dealer versus the factory guys. And that was really a great program and fun rivalry. So that's kind of where I got stuck back in. And then, I bought an MX-5 GTL car, and then I bought an RX-7 GT3 car, and, I just can't help myself.
So you're obviously no stranger to the different models and varieties of Mazda cars out there, whether you're racing or selling them. I want to talk about how not only your experience as a driver and a competitor, but just knowing the grassroots side of Mazda Motorsports, how does that impact your business as someone who during the week is selling Mazda cars to customers on the road?
Well, we're very fortunate with our locations. We're right in between Laguna Seca and Sonoma, Sears Point or Sonoma. I think the Bay Area has a pretty good awareness of motorsports, and I think that plays into Mazda's hands. My personal experience as far as being an enthusiastic driver and an enthusiastic car person, I think that helps my business as well. The great thing about racing is it teaches you process improvement. It teaches you teamwork. It teaches you development of skills. And we overlay that. We bring some other team members along for the ride. And it's just a great add to being a Mazda dealer. And I think Mazda supports it uniquely in that their grassroots support is the best in the business. And I think that they've done a great job to differentiate themselves between other brands and leverage that grassroots appeal. So as a dealer, I couldn't be happier with the brand and the way they go with their grassroots motorsports.
Well, I think you hit on something really important right there, Taz, which is, Chevy and Ford, they may have their NASCAR campaigns, but at Mazda, you can walk into one of your dealerships in Northern California and purchase one of the models of vehicles that are raced, maybe at the June Sprints at Road America or at an NMX5 Cup race alongside IndyCar. And you said it best, it's like a big advertisement for your brand. So the racing and the grassroots level of competition has to benefit people's interest, just that alone, in the Mazda brand.
Yes, Mazda has their heritage of racing, and Mazda has the walk to back up the talk that a lot of manufacturers don't have. There's nothing more alien than going into a Chevrolet dealership and looking at a Camaro on the showroom floor or a Mustang at a Ford dealership and saying, "Oh, that's a NASCAR." No, it's not. Nobody buys that. But when you walk into a Mazda dealership and you sit in an MX-5, you can see yourself, with not a whole lot of effort, this car could be on a racetrack.
And so then that begs the question, and this is just something from my personal curiosity. Do you ever have someone come in and go, hey, I saw these racing online. I've heard about these through Motor Trend, these Mazdas. There's more of them road raced any given weekend than any other type of car. I want to learn more about it. And they come to your dealerships. Is that something that you have organically? Is that something that you work to push on people and that opens up more interest? How do you personally as a salesman intertwine Mazda's racing grassroots level into the sales of a road car?
Well, and again, I'm kind of nutty. I do funny stuff. Like I'll dress a mannequin up with my racing suit on and my helmet just for laughs and stand it next to a race car, just goofy stuff like that. I've got plenty of race cars. So, I don't mind pulling them onto the showroom. There's always one around. And I'm unique in that my brand for my dealerships is that we've always been into racing. We've always been into the sport, and we don't mind talking about it. There's, it really works well with my new image store that I built. I remodeled extensively my store about 3 years ago, and it's got just great graphics and cool stuff. I mean, it has a picture of my 2012 or 2013 GX winning championship car in one of the offices, has the Mazda 6 diesel car on the wall. And then if you turn around, hey, that car's right over there on a lift in the showroom. So I always enjoy pointing that out to people, that I am kind of a nut. But I think people look at that and say, if this person is this enthusiastic about this product, and the people that work at the dealership are enthusiastic about the product, that's something different than just going in and basically pulling a number at a Toyota dealership and standing in line and buying another Prius.
Taz, I think you sum it up so well. There's an actual connection. There's a relationship between you and your staff, the sport of racing at the grassroots level, and then the customers that come in interested in the Mazda brand and the vehicles that you see, whether on the track or in the city streets. So Taz, we really appreciate you calling in and being a part of Mazda Motorsports Moments. Obviously, where you're located, you have a lot of people there that are interested in racing. They're interested in great cars and driving on fun roads. So you really do have a good formula for success there. Thanks a bunch for being a part of the Mazda Grassroots family, and hopefully we get to talk to you again soon.
Hey, it's been great having this Zoom session. I do need to get a haircut. It's unbelievable. I got 3 months of growth or something going on. But other than that, man, it's a pleasure to meet with you guys, and please keep up the support for racers and dealers. And Mazda keeps doing what they're doing. Everybody's going to go forward. Thank you very much.
Senior Manager of Brand and Entertainment for Mazda North American Operations, Chris Hill, joins us when we're not at the racetrack. We're always happy to have Chris on the line. Chris, thanks so much for being here, my man. Grassroots Racing is as big a part of Mazda Motorsports as any other program you guys have. It's a very proud part of Mazda. What does it mean to the brand to have so many cars road race every single weekend?
Yeah, thank you very much, Tony. It's a pleasure to be here. Enjoy speaking with you. Grassroots racing is very important to Mazda and the Mazda brand. In 2019, nearly 54% of all production-based entries in SCCA were Mazda or Mazda-powered vehicles. Mazda has a big presence in this grassroots racing environment. We're involved in many different forms of motorsports, as everyone knows, from top-level open wheel, GT, prototype, touring, but our commitment to grassroots really has never wavered in the past. We've had a number of different ladder series. Grassroots remains this foundational part of our culture with Mazda. It has been for decades, and it certainly will be for decades to come. And really the reason why is this grassroots community experiences the purest form of what we call Hashiro Yorikobi. Loosely translated from Japanese, it means the joy of driving, or really the joy from driving. And I think we would all agree that there is no greater joy than strapping into a race car and driving around a racetrack. Be that an autocross course on a Saturday, be that a grassroots event all the way up to your SCCA solo nationals that you've been vying for all season long. That purest form of driving, that purest form of joy that you get from driving is what our grassroots racers experience every day. And that experience that they get is really the lifeblood of how we develop our vehicles, all of our road vehicles. Of course, Miata is one of the models that is, raced most on weekends. But even if you take spec Miata out of the SCCA, it's nearly 40%. Mazda still represents 40% of SCCA. So, it's a huge part of grassroots racing, and these folks being most connected to our brand and carrying that evangelism through everything they do on and off the racetrack is important to us. It's so important to us that these folks are really thought of as family. They are our biggest fans, as I mentioned, and for that family, we offer the best in industry contingency. At races, we have dedicated support staff. We have dedicated motorsports parts support and a website to support our grassroots racers. So it's important to us. They're important to us. So we try and do everything we can to support them.
Chris, you hit on culture in your answer, and I don't know of another car brand out there that has a culture or puts as much emphasis on their culture as Mazda does. And I think it comes from the top down, whether it was former North American President John Doonan, whether it's Nelson Cosgrove, who now has that position today. You guys truly do treat your grassroots racers as family. Nelson spoke about it on an episode recently. The SCCA runoffs are coming up, and Mazda puts a ton of effort and support into that event, whether it's sending top-level executives or just having a lot of on-track support. The runoffs and the June sprints that just took place are big events for you guys.
Yes, they are. Absolutely. And at those runoffs, it's important that Mazda is there with hospitality when we can be. We also have, a great banquet that we do to celebrate kind of the end of the season and really celebrate our owners. It gives us an opportunity to, as I mentioned before, really celebrate this family, this community family of grassroots racers.
And the show that we're on, Mazda Motorsports Moments, started with recapping the dominant summer of 2019 in the DPI ranks at the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. But, the true focus, I think, especially of today's episode and Mazda in general, is that first level of racing that gets drivers up to the opportunity to compete maybe in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship or the MX5 Cup presented by BF Goodrich. So you guys really do cultivate that ground level of motorsports and drivers and team. When you look back in your time at Mazda, what are some of your more fond memories of grassroots events that you've been able to be a part of?
Tony, there's a number of memories I have from grassroots racing that really stick with me. One I'll share with you is at the SCCA runoffs a few years ago, had the opportunity to spend a couple days at the track, really mingle with our motorsports community, get to know several of the different car owners, several of the different racers. I was really struck by this sense of community on the track. Like a lot of sports, there tends to be a hero and a villain. And in that, whatever category that you're racing in, you may have that guy that always beats you, or that gal that's just a little bit faster than you, or vice versa. You go back and forth. But at the end of the day, these guys and gals put their arms around each other. They share this same love of Mazda and this same Hashiro Yurakobi, or joy of driving, or joy from driving, to the point where I think someone lost a transmission or blew an engine or something happened. I can't remember the details, but there were the guys in the pits on either side of this team that were going through their parts, giving spare parts, helping rebuild an engine so this racer could get back on the track, qualify, and then make it to the next level. That's really this spirit of family that, to me, resonated, that this is a wonderful community. This is a community of not only people who love racing, but people who love being around other people who love racing as well. And there's nothing that we want to do more than support those people, because they're advocates for our brand. And it's great to have those kind of advocates supporting our brand on the track and off the track.
I'll tell you what, Chris, the way that you speak from an executive's position within the Mazda Motorsports family about your grassroots competitors, the teams, and most importantly, the families that make up these series. I think it really shows what Mazda thinks of its grassroots program. I really appreciate everything you guys and you yourself do for Mazda Motorsports, whether it's celebrating a win at Watkins Glen last summer in the Salem 6 Hours, or it's you on the ground at an MX5 Cup race, or the runoffs or the June sprints. You and your team are always supporting these racers, and we really appreciate it. Thanks a bunch for being on the call today, and can't wait to see you back at a racetrack very soon.
Thank you very much, Tony, and thanks to all our grassroots racers and all our motorsports fans. We appreciate you.
Folks, that'll do it for episode number 7 of Mazda Motorsports Moments. Want to once again say thanks to all 4 of our guests for coming on and talking about a level of motorsports that I hope gets a bit more recognition as we move forward. Can't wait to see all of you back at the track very soon. We thank you for tuning in, and we can't wait to see you down the road.